The sun, the moon, and the stars will not shine for 1/3 of the day? Is this really going to happen in the end times at the fourth trumpet judgment? This might sound like a strange question, but let me explain. In the last book of the Bible, the Revelation of Jesus Christ, we find 3 lists of judgments pronounced upon the earth. Each of them include 7 individual events. So altogether, these 3 lists pronounce 21 cataclysmic judgments that will come upon the earth in the end times. They are designed to demonstrate the power of God and thereby warn the people of the earth to choose Christ as their king before he returns to destroy his adversaries. In my previous videos, we've already examined the first list of 7 seal judgments, which included a powerful leader entering the world stage, an ensuing world war, famine, plague, and death, as well as the martyrdom of many believers and a great earthquake coupled with a meteor shower that creates what appears to be a dust cloud that darkens the sun and makes the light from the moon appear blood red. These events probably take place in the first 2 or 3 years of the 7-year countdown to the return of Christ that is popularly referred to as the tribulation. We've also examined the first 3 judgments known as the trumpet judgments in previous videos, and we found that in these 1/3 of the trees and grass are burned in a storm of hail and fire. Then 1/3 of the Mediterranean Sea is turned to blood after a great volcanic eruption. And then what appears to be a meteor impact called wormwood spreads some sort of toxic, bitter chemical into 1/3 of the Earth's freshwater drinking supply. That's the first 3 of this second list of judgments, which are represented in Revelation chapters 8 through 11 by 7 angels sounding 7 trumpets. In this video, we're going to zoom in on the 4th of these 7 trumpets, found in Revelation 8, verse 12. Our goal is to ask, if this is going to be a real event that will actually take place in the future, what will it look like? Revelation says, "And the 4th angel sounded, and the 3rd part of the sun was smitten, and the 3rd part of the moon, and the 3rd part of the stars, so as the 3rd part of them was darkened, and the day shone not for a 3rd part of it, and the night likewise." So, in this judgment, 1/3 of the light from the sun, the moon, and the stars is not going to reach the earth. This is admittedly a bit confusing, but on reflection, it appears to be explained in the second half of the verse. At first glance, we might think that the beginning of the verse, which states that the sun, the moon, and the stars were smitten or struck, means that something is actually wrong with them. We might imagine that 1/3 of the stars in space actually stop shining, and that 1/3 of the sun actually stops burning, and 1/3 of the moon actually stops reflecting the sun. But if that were true, we would struggle to understand the physical logistics of this judgment. Will God really extinguish 1/3 of the stars? How can 1/3 of the sun stop burning, but the rest of it continue to burn? Wouldn't the earth freeze over if the sun's heat was reduced by 1/3? Well, I think these questions are answered when we realize that the first statement, that 1/3 of the sun, the moon, and the stars were smitten, is explained by the second half of the verse, where we find this statement, "So as the day shone not for a 3rd part of it, and the night likewise." In other words, something must be blocking the sunshine, the moonlight, and the starlight for 1/3 of the day and for 1/3 of the night during this judgment. Remember that these judgments are listed from the perspective of those on the earth. If God blocks the light from the sun, the appearance on the earth is the same as if 1/3 of the sun stopped shining, because it did stop shining on the earth. Notice that the sun isn't dimmed here. which would be the effect if only 1/3 of the sun stopped burning. Rather, 1/3 of the sunlight time stopped shining. So then something prevents the light from reaching the earth, but only for 1/3 of each day and 1/3 of each night. What could this be? Well, I definitely can't tell you for sure, but I can guess that it must be something that God will place above the earth, but between the earth and the moon. I say that only because it is blocking the light from the moon as well as other heavenly bodies. Since the moon is the closest heavenly body to the earth, whatever is blocking their light must be closer to the earth than the moon is, right? However, it only blocks that light for 1/3 of the day and 1/3 of the night. So the earth is continuing to rotate, apparently, in and out of the shadow of this thing. When the earth is in the shadow of it, that's when there is darkness. Now, there are 24 hours in a day, the last time I checked, which would mean that this produces darkness for 8 hours, 1/3 of those 24 hours every day. The text even states that it is dark for 1/3 of the daylight hours, which in the ancient mind would refer to the hours between 6 a.m. and 6 p.m., and 1/3 of the nighttime hours, which would be the hours between 6 p.m. and 6 a.m. This gives us reason to think that whatever is blocking the light is situated in such a place as to block the sun from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m., and the stars from 6 p.m. to 10 a.m., or else the other way around, beginning in the nighttime hours at 2 a.m. and going until the morning hours at 10 a.m. Because 4 hours from the day and 4 hours from the night have to be without sunlight, moonlight, and starlight. Now, we can only guess as to whether this light blocker might be in orbit around the planet so that times change from place to place and from day to day, or if God causes it to follow the sun in relation to the earth so that it continually is dark for those specific hours every single day all around the world. I'm not a scientist, but I suppose someone who studies the orbits of heavenly bodies might be able to figure out exactly how this could or could not take place. But at any rate, it's absolutely spectacular, fascinating, and terrifying to consider. Maybe it's a thick, fast-moving cloud of things in the atmosphere or in space. Maybe it's a giant object orbiting the Earth. Or maybe it's an inexplicable act of angels literally preventing light from hitting the Earth in some supernatural or otherworldly way. Whatever the case, we can conclude that it will clearly demonstrate the power of God to those upon the earth, and it will severely hamper the use of many of our technologies, assuming that the technologies that they utilize during the time of this judgment are similar to whatever we have today. Solar energy, for example, will be diminished. Satellites may be obstructed or destroyed. And if this is a massive orbiting object, it may well catastrophically affect the ocean tides. After all, the moon does cause our tides, right? And a second moon thing would throw the tides out of their regular balance and produce massive flooding, I would expect, in many coastal regions. Now, most of what we've talked about so far has been speculation. I'll admit that. I think these are good guesses, but they are guesses nonetheless. It's really impossible to know just how God will choose to accomplish this judgment, but suffice it to say that there are certainly many possibilities at his disposal, and it will be interesting to see just how he accomplishes it when he does. That being said, let's move on to the textual consideration. You may have already noticed something very significant about the text in Revelation chapter 8. That is, that there must be something meaningful about that fraction 1/3. It has appeared in every one of these first 4 trumpet judgments. 1/3 of the land is destroyed by hail and fire, 1/3 of the sea is turned to blood, 1/3 of the fresh water is made bitter, and 1/3 of the heavenly light now is extinguished. There may be many reasons that God has for this repetition, but there is one that seems inescapable. The people on the earth are being symbolically told, I think, that these judgments are only 1/3 of all that God can and will do. They are only the second set of 3 series of progressively worsening plagues. In fact, the next set of plagues, after the trumpet judgments, called the vial or bowl judgments, contain a repetition of similar calamities to the trumpet judgments. Only, in these bowl judgments, the destruction will be 100% rather than 1/3. For instance, in the second bowl judgment, the sea will be turned to blood entirely. In the third bowl judgment, all of the rivers and fountains of water will be turned to blood and will be undrinkable. In the fifth bowl judgment, the kingdom of the Antichrist is entirely darkened with no sun, moon, or starlight at all, and in the seventh bowl judgment, there will be a great hailstorm worldwide. Notice how these pair up with the 1/3 from the first 4 trumpet judgments. We'll talk more about the bowl judgments later, but for now we should at least note that the 1/3 number seems to have a very simple message. God is saying that these judgments are bad, but they're only a fraction of what's coming if you don't repent. Now, I think also there's a possibility that the 1/3 number might signify the timing in which these judgments take place. What I mean is that in the 7-year countdown to the return of Christ, these 4 trumpet judgments might mark 1/3 of the way through. 7 years divided by 3 would be 28 months, or 2 years and 4 months. It is entirely possible that those first 7 seal judgments will take place in the first 2 of the 7 years, allowing for the first 4 trumpet judgments to potentially take place right around the 28-month mark of the tribulation. There's certainly no way to be sure about this, but I will say that in chapters 11, 12, and 13, we see a time frame, 3.5 years, 48 months, and 1,260 days, show up repeatedly. I think we have good reason to think that this repetition signifies in those chapters that the narrative has arrived at the midway point to the 7-year tribulation, 3.5 years into it. If we use that symbolism as a standard, we could imagine that it's at least possible, however unprovable, that God might be giving us a similar symbolism here in chapter 8. These first 4 trumpets might mark the 2-year, 4-month mark of those 7 terrible years. What do you think? Do you have another theory about how God might bring about the darkening of the sun, moon, and stars for only 1/3 of the day? Some have suggested that the day is literally shorter by 8 actual hours, and that the earth spins faster during this judgment, or something. But the text says that the sun, the moon, and the stars don't shine during that time. It does not say that the day is shorter. What's your opinion? Do you find other ideas more compelling than the ones I've laid out here? And what do you think about the possibility that the 1/3 number might signify the timing of the tribulation in which these things take place? Could God be telling the people of that time that they are only 1/3 of the way through this terrifying hour of temptation? Whatever your conclusions are, I want to hear them. Let me know what you think by typing your thoughts in the comments below. Now, before I go, I want to sincerely thank you for watching this video. If you like this content, don't forget to hit subscribe to support the channel and to see more content like this. You can follow the Bible Explained on Facebook too at facebook.com/The Bible Explained. Also, I want to give a big thanks to the folks at videobible.com for letting me use their awesome artwork in this video. Check them out on YouTube, and don't forget to hit subscribe. Now, I simply can't leave without reminding you that the entire Bible is ultimately about one thing: the redemption of mankind by Jesus Christ. You see, the Bible tells us that all men are sinners, and justice demands that we depraved sinners pay for our crime against God for eternity in hell. That's definitely bad news, but the Bible is all about this good news, that Jesus Christ died on the cross to pay the penalty for our sin. Since that penalty has been paid, all that is required of you is that you turn by faith to the Lord and find salvation in Him. If you've never chosen Christ by faith and received this gift of God, won't you do that today? Leave a comment or send me a private message on Facebook, and I'll be happy to talk to you more about having your sins forgiven by Jesus Christ.